The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nick Fantasy. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to get 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Friday afternoon, roughly 12:40 p.m. Eastern Time on January 10th. I'm Rosso, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the actual final matches, the final episode pre-Aussie Open in Adelaide and in Auckland. So we're going to preview both matchups in a second. You have the final between Monfils and Bergs and the final between Felix and Korda. So we're going to preview both those matches in a second. For that, though, do want to recap what happened in the last episode, both for the lock and dog picks and for the actual matchups in the semis. Overall, unfortunately, for the lock and dog, not a good episode. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Did sweep back-to-back episodes, and then we ended up losing both picks for the show yesterday, as we ended up having, for the lock, Basaveretti and Monfils under, half a tie break at minus 136. Still love the play and the price. Unfortunately, though, the first set did go to a breaker. Couple of break point chances. Unfortunately, nobody converted, and you ended up seeing Monfils win the first set via tie break. Fun matchup, but unfortunately did lose the lock there. For the dog, ended up losing Paul to win the first set and the match, which was pretty annoying at plus 120 because Paul had a set point. He also was actually up a mini break in the tie break and then punted away back-to-back points on a serve. Felix held from that point forward, eventually did win in 3 sets. So either way, point is the play lost anyway, but Paul did win the second set. So if he got the job done there and converted that first set point, maybe the same script happens in the second set and we win. The point is, though, did pick up a loss there for the lock and dog, which is unfortunate, but we'll look to bounce back with a sweep here on Friday-Saturday. Also, a reminder, once again, this is the last episode before the Aussie Open. We're going to be doing 2 episodes for the previews of the Aussie Open, one for the men's draw and one for the women's draw. So look for 2 episodes over the next day or so for the Australian Open, one for the men's and one for the women's. Now, before we get into the actual recap of the semis in a bit more depth, want to remind you once again that you can show support for the show by subscribing on YouTube, and a reminder, you can also leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great merchandise from the tennis show. We have sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs, all high quality, all cheap, all affordable, different colors as well for the shirts. If you want some options, we have options for you. Also, check out the merch store for other shows of the network, the NBA show, MLB show, college experience, etc. And a reminder that the NFL is having the playoffs start tomorrow. So if you want to check out some actual picks for the playoffs, don't forget to tune into the Sports Game Podcast for all of your NFL picks and props. Time to start off with the recap of the matchups that we saw in the semis. Overall, I'd say it was a mix of drama and I'd say a mix of, just one-sided affairs, because you ended up seeing Borges make the match interesting again as he dropped the first set to Bergs, and then eventually did win the second, but Bergs did outlast him as he did win the third set 7-5. Fun matchup, full of drama, felt like it was exhausting, especially with the overall heat there in Australia, but the point is Bergs did get the job done as he advances into his first ever ATP final. See what happens there in the matchup against Monfils. Now, Monfils' match against Basaveretti was a straight set win. It was competitive, though. 7-6, 6-4. A lot of long rallies, a lot of drama. Monfils, though, I thought served a bit too well, and it seemed like Monfils eventually just found the opening in Basaveretti's serve to get a break. But for the most part, it was a good overall hardcourt matchup that ended in straight sets, but was definitely not easy for Monfils as he does advance to the final. A reminder, by the way, we do have some rooting interest in that matchup going into this episode because we have one outright left for the week. It's a big one because we do have Monfils at 16-1. So hopefully gets the job done there. Would be nice to end up winning a 16-1 outright in one of the first events of the year. So hopefully Monfils gets it done. He's favored in the final. If you want to hedge, you can. Point is, though, knock on wood, hopefully Monfils gets the job done and hopefully ends up cashing us a nice outright to start the season. As for the other matchups, though, that I ended up seeing in Adelaide, you had one marathon match between Paul and Felix, which definitely came down to the wire. Felt like a very classic Paul loss, where he had a chance to potentially break into the top 10 for, I believe, the first time. If he won, ended up losing. Paul had a couple chances there in the first set as Felix was up a break, then gave the break right back, then had to fight off a set point. Very competitive point. However, Felix had hit the actual volley there on the potential Paul pass and eventually did hold. And then Paul went up a mini break and punted away 2 points on his serve and eventually did lose the first set. Came back and won. And then unfortunately, though, did fall behind early in the third set. had a couple break points there, I believe, in the 2-3 game, couldn't convert, and then eventually Felix held it out for the win. So a classic Paul loss where the match was very close. It was in the balance, and Paul just unfortunately came up a bit short on some big points, punted away some free points, and Felix kind of took control of the aggression as the match went on, as he eventually did outlast Paul. And a fun matchup, though, that ended 6-4 in the third. And you had Korda, who would beat Kekmanovic in straight sets. Competitive, though, only one break in the entire match, and Korda did win that one in straight sets. So kind of similar for both events. You had one 3-set marathon and one that was a straight set match that was competitive, though. The point is, though, you do have Korda now taking on Felix, and you have Monfils taking on Bergs for the finals in Adelaide and in Auckland, respectively. Now, for the actual schedule for this episode, we are going to do Auckland first. Auckland's actually taking place on Friday, and then you have the Adelaide match taking place at 2:30 a.m. Eastern. So it's going to be, once again, a pretty, I'd say, interesting night of tennis, because you have one match that's somewhat early on at 8:30 p.m., and then you're off for about probably 2+ hours in between. So you might pass out before then. But once again, it is a pretty interesting setup where you have one matchup taking place for the final in an ATP event. And then the Australian Open starts the same day, as the Australian Open does start, I believe, at around 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. So once again, stay tuned for the actual Australian Open episodes. Maybe we'll do one tonight. Maybe we have the draws out. We'll see. Depends on my schedule, but worst case, we'll do 2 episodes back-to-back at some point tomorrow. Anyway, before we get into the actual preview of the finals taking place in the next, I'd say, 10 to 12 hours, 14 hours technically, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by DraftKings, because DraftKings has you covered for the playoffs. Talking about the playoffs, the NFL playoffs is starting, and a reminder that DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is the key to winning in the playoffs. You can score big by betting on them on DraftKings, the number one place for betting touchdowns, ready to place your first bet. A reminder, try betting on simple things like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your picks. Plus, a reminder, you can try it out with a new account. New customers do get, once again, $200 in bonus bets instantly with a $5 wager. Great promo there. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use code SGP. That's code SGP for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping what happened in the semis here in Adelaide and Auckland. Now it's time to move on into the final matches that we have in these two events. First of all, shout out to the comments section. A reminder, we do go live on YouTube for these shows. If you want to stop by, ask me some questions on matches, or just say hi, you can do so on YouTube. If not, that's okay too. Just a reminder. Shout out to Diego, who passed by and decided to join the show. How's it going? Welcome back. Said he's not really been betting lately, but now he wants to go back into it. What do you feel comfortable with, man? It's up to you. I'm here just giving out information, but either way, welcome to the show. And also, a shout out to everybody else in the chat. How's it going? What's up, Innocent? How's it going? Nice to meet you. Hopefully, life is good over there in South Africa. Moving on to the actual matches. So once again, starting off with the Bergs and Monfils match. Yes, we already have Monfils at 16-1, but some of you might not. So getting into the actual matches here, Monfils is a decent favorite, the biggest favorite on the card at -165. Bergs is +145 for the spread. You have either 1.5 games or 2.5. 2.5 is -105 for Monfils, and you have Bergs at +2.5 at -115. You can also get Monfils, though, at -1.5 at -135, and +1.5 for Bergs at +105. For the total games, you have the over 22.5 here at -120. The under is even money. For the set spread, Monfils in straight sets is +160. Bergs in straight sets is +325. The over 2.5 sets is a +125. Now, for the actual matchup, Monfils has been really good lately. In fact, Monfils has not dropped a set in the last couple of matches. He ended up having a miraculous comeback in the first round against Martinez. Since then, he has been rolling. He's won 8 straight sets. As for Bergs, he went through qualifying, actually, and he's not really had an easy ride, but he's still been winning, as he has won all 6 matches, has gone to a deciding set in 4 of those 6. So Bergs has been really on the court for a long time over the course of this event, but he's been winning, and he has been coming through in some big moments. The serve has kind of betrayed him at times, though, and he has had to kind of dig himself out of it. But either way, point is Bergs has been a solid player for a couple of years, mostly challenger guy. I like this game, and then I saw him beat Caboli in the Davis Cup a couple months ago, and I thought that he was on the verge of maybe having himself, I don't want to say a breakout season, but a good season, potentially. And it seems like he's starting to do so, as he made his first ever ATP final. We'll see if he gets the job done here in this event. As for Monfils, he's been around the block a few times. We know this. He's a veteran. And when he's not facing off against Djokovic, he can beat anybody. Case in point to the Alcaraz match last year, where he ended up beating Alcaraz in a 3-setter. Point is, though, I think Monfils, at the end of the day, is worthy of being a favorite. He's won 8 straight sets, and Berg's fatigue could be an issue because he has been on the court for a long time. Back-to-back 3-setters was a 7-5 final set against Borges. It seems like fatigue was hitting him a bit yesterday. We'll see if he once again has the mental toughness as well to rise to the occasion. He did look good in some Davis Cup action, so I don't exactly expect him to be too overwhelmed. But when it's your first ever ATP final and you're against a guy that's been in a bunch of these, I do wonder about his overall, I'd say, mental state over the course of the matchup. Bergs has been pretty streaky in a lot of these matches, and he has been able to show some mental toughness. But when you're in your first ever final on the ATP Tour, I do wonder if you're going to look sharp and going to be able to handle the same level of adversity that you've been dealing with over the first couple of rounds as easily. I don't think so. I think Monfils been serving well. I think his return game's solid. Baena, we know, is not a great hardcourt player. He still took Bergs to 3 sets. Bergs really hasn't beaten many great players in the event. You could argue that both guys haven't. A point is, though, Busta was good in qualifying. Did win that one in 3 for Bergs. Beat Comasagna, who I do like. That was also a 3-setter. Beat 2 relative, I'd say, underwhelming players in Beecroft and Nardi. Then beat Baena in the quarters and Borges in the semis. So once again, a decent path by Bergs. Really not much competition there. As for Monfils, kind of the same boat. Beat Basaveretti, who I like a lot. Still very young and unproven, but he has been very good over the last couple months. Beat Diaz Acosta, which was an absolute gift that was the matchup he got in the quarters. Struff is dangerous, though, on any given day, and he ended up beating him in straight sets. And Martinez is not really good on hard court. That went to 3. So both guys haven't really faced off against great competition, but I think that Monfils has looked better if you're going by eye test. Bergs had moments, but I think that Monfils has been more consistent. The rally game will be there. Bergs' firepower. Monfils, I do think, has a bit more rally tolerance. I think he can extract some unforced errors from Bergs en route to winning some longer rallies. And Monfils has served quietly well so far in this event. So I'll go with Monfils to get the job done here. Don't mind the games, though, for around minus 1.5 or -2. I think Bergs, once again, keep it interesting. But I'm also biased because I'm rooting for Monfils because I got him at 16-1 pre-tournament to win the event. But I think that he's better than Bergs for asking for my overall opinion on the skill set of both players. Give me Monfils in this one. I picked Monfils because I did think his skill set translated the best of anybody to the courts here in Auckland. And I do think that his rally game is better than Bergs's. Bergs is going to have to unload on the forehand to try to, I'd say, push Monfils around the court. Don't think he'll be as successful as he wants to be. Could be a 3-setter. Wouldn't shock me. But I am going to go with Monfils to get the job done here to win another title in his career. Moving on to the next matchup. You have the matchup of the day, no offense to Bergs or Monfils. You have Felix taking on Korda. Now, for this one, Korda's -130. You have Felix at +110. For the spread here, you have -1 for Korda. You have +1 for Felix. For the over-under 23 games, a bit of juice, though, to the over at -115. For the spread here in sets, you have Korda to win in straight sets at +195. You have Felix to win in straight sets at +250. The over 2.5 sets is +125. If you want some team totals, both guys are at 12.5. Korda's team totals over 12.5 at -130. You have Felix over 12.5 at -120. Now, for the matchup, I will point out the head-to-head has been interesting. It's a bit dated, though, as these guys have not faced off for a couple years. They have 3 career meetings, 2 on hard court, and all 3 meetings did end in straight sets. Now, the 2 meetings on hard court, Felix did win comfortably, beat him in Acapulco in 2021, 6-3, 6-4, and beat him by the exact same scoreline in Antwerp in 2022. There was a meeting in between, though, on clay and Estoril, where Korda did win 6-2, 6-2. Does that mean anything? No. That was basically 2 or 3 years ago, so I'm not going to factor too much into it. But the point is, Felix has done well on hard court in the past against Korda, if you do care about that certain thing. Now, for the actual, let's say, path of both players, Felix has been good. I'd say he's been vulnerable, but he's been winning. Beat Paul in 3, beat Giron in straight sets with a breaker in there, and dropped the first set to Kaza, and then ended up coming back and winning with a 7-5 in the final set. So, once again, Felix has been advancing. I can't say he's looked dominant per se, but Paul is a borderline top 10 guy in the world, and he did win. So it is a nice win nonetheless. Now, as for Korda, he's been good. He's barely played because he had a walkover and a bye in the actual event, but he ended up beating Kekmanovic, who was in good form in straight sets. Only 1 break in the entire match. No break points faced for Korda. So overall, Korda served very well on the courts here on Friday, and you're looking on Friday morning. And he also beat Fekina in his first match here, 6-3, 6-3. So the point is, Felix, though, has gone to a deciding set twice, and Korda's won every set here. So it's been a lot easier for Korda's path, but the point is, I do think that Felix has faced off against better competition. So it is pretty interesting, but I do think Korda should be favored. The argument, though, is that Felix has the firepower to once again outlast, or I should say, to push Korda around endpoints quickly. And if the serve is on, then I do think he can find some openings. Now, the problem he runs into is that Korda is still very solid as an all-around player when he's mentally there. You could argue that him and Paul are kind of similar stylistically. I think that Korda has a bit more firepower, but stylistically, both guys, besides being American, want to stand behind the baseline, want to rally, try to force the other guy to hit some errors, and try to once again switch things up with a little bit of variety. Korda can volley a little bit. I think he's a better volleyer than he actually gives himself credit for. Point is, though, I expect the baseline rally that should actually feature, I'd say, a lot of longer points. Felix, though, should try to shorten the points. I do think if you're asking me who's going to win more, I'd say 15-shot rallies, 12-shot rallies, my answer would be Korda. I think Korda is a bit more reliable. Yes, he can be a head case at times. Yes, he can self-destruct at times. He did win a 500 last year, though, so I do think some of the confidence has definitely been there. And the fact is, he made the final in his first event after having elbow surgery. I think he's looked good. Like, I am going to point out, I think Korda should probably be favored, not to mention the fact there might be some fatigue issues with Felix having a massive match against Paul and Korda kind of coasting in that match against Kekmanovic on Friday. But I think for the matchup, I'm expecting a bit of a war here. I don't mind seeing a breaker or two. Tie breaks plus 125 on DraftKings in the match, which I actually like quite a bit. I think you might see both guys hold 6 times in a row, or I should say 6 times each. So I think you're looking at maybe a breaker in there. I don't mind the over. I think the team total overs are worth a look here, and the match will be competitive. I think it might go 3 sets, but point is, Korda has been good. So is Felix. I know Felix has been a thorn in my side for years because I just think that he punts away so many free points that it drives me nuts. Korda kind of does the same thing, but he's gotten better at it lately of avoiding that same issue. So I think that Korda will find a way to win. I think it'll be close, though. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I think it'll be a very, very close battle. Might go to 3 sets, maybe even a final set breaker. That wouldn't even shock me if it goes all the way to the distance. But I do think Korda will give away less free points than Felix. Korda served well so far in this event. Once again, not facing a break point in the last match he played against Kekmanovic, who was in good form. I think Korda and Felix are going to have a very close matchup, but I am going to go with Korda. I think he's in slightly better form. And I do think the unforced error count will be a serious issue for Felix. Not to mention, his second serve is really not that threatening. Thought Paul did a great job early in the match of threatening the second serve with a lot of aggressive returns. I think Korda can do the same thing. But Felix's second serve really does not feature much variety. It doesn't have much punch. It's mostly a rally starter. And I do think Korda can definitely capitalize if Felix does miss a decent percent of the first serve. So if Felix hits a lot of first serves for percentage, I'll have a good chance of winning. If not, I do think Korda has the chance to get the job done once again in relatively convincing fashion. But I am going to go with Korda based on the actual line. And based on the form, I think Felix will be close, but close will not be good enough en route to an eventual loss to Korda in the final. Now, for the actual total, once again, I do like the over in this one. Do like the team total. Over for both guys at 12.5. You might get a breaker in there. Once again, tiebreak, though, a plus 125. I do like quite a bit. I think that's a very good price for two guys that have been serving very well. For the actual path, Felix has had a tiebreak in 2 straight. He had a 7-5 against Kaza, so he almost had 3 straight matches with a 7-6. Also had a 7-5 against Fritz, so he's had at least one set of 12-plus games in 4 straight matches. So once again, he has been getting involved into some deep sets. As for Korda, he had a breaker in the last match against Kecmanovic, so once again, you might see a long set or two, which does bode well for the over. I'll look at the other comments section here. What's up, Uneducated? Welcome back. See Jason mentioning that he had Bergs, he had Mertens, and he had Keys. Shout out to you. Nice job there in the early morning slate. You like Bergs and Felix. Seems like we disagree on some stuff here, but point is the matches should be close. So either way, I prefer some team total stuff, for example, in the Korda match. I don't feel great about picking Korda to win. I think it might be a borderline coin flip, but I think that Korda has looked a bit better and a bit more consistent. The issue with Felix that I run into, and that was kind of an issue with him and Paul in the match in the morning. Both guys took turns being awful. It felt like there was a lot of momentum swings just out of nowhere in that matchup where both guys were punting away free points left and right. I think Cord will do a better job of limiting the mistakes, and I think that Felix still has that issue of just hitting too many errors, and that might be the deciding factor for me in this matchup. But once again, I'm probably not going to bet Korda on the side. I don't have a strong opinion about it, so hopefully you end up winning your plays again here on a Friday-Saturday. See, Uneducated mentioning Bergs. He almost pulled off the Mueller. He almost did. He dropped the first set. Or Borges, I mean, yeah. He dropped the first set in every match and almost won the matches again, but he eventually fell short against Bergs in the final set. And Steve mentioning that he likes my overall voice. Thanks, I appreciate it. McEnroe as a broadcaster, I think, is fine. Either way, though, point is, I might promote gambling a bit too much to be featured on ESPN. But point is, though, I do enjoy covering tennis, and hopefully you do enjoy the show if you are new to the program. Anyway, now it's time for the actual Lock and Dog picks, the best bets of the show. For that, though, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Nick Fantasy because they have a lot of great items in their pick-and menu. They have, once again, a lot of great overall features that will help make you money. They have profit boosts. They have Gimme Pick'ems, a lot of great promos there. They also have a best ball playoff lineup for the NFL. Gauntlet Tournament has $2 million in prize up for grabs for just a $25 entry. A reminder, they have the NFL, they have college football, college basketball, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and more. They also have tennis. If you want to go for breaks of serve, for example, or even aces, they have options there. You can do specials and boosts on Netflix entries. For my entry, I'll go with Russell Wilson, higher half an interception in the upcoming game against the Ravens. It's a massive spread. They might have to play catch-up. Might throw a lot. Had a pick six against the Ravens a couple weeks ago. Wilson has been, for lack of a better term, not good lately, and I can see him struggling again here. Give me Russell Wilson higher half a pick in this game coming up over the weekend. A reminder, though, when you do sign up for your new account, use the promo code SGPN to claim a special first-time deposit offer up to $1K in bonus cash on a fantasy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished previewing the finals here in Auckland and Adelaide. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I'm going to do one play in each match, by the way. For the lock, I am going to go back to the Monfils and Bergs match, and I am going to go with Monfils minus 1.5 games here at minus 135. Now, I understand Bergs has been good in this event, but he has been dropping sets to weaker competition. I think Monfils has looked like the best player on the court the entire week. He's won 8 straight sets. He's been playing great after a really bad start against Martinez for about a set and a half. He has really flipped the switch, and he's been really, really good. I think Monfils should be the favorite. I think that he definitely has the ability to break Bergs multiple times, and he's been serving quite well in this event. So I think that Monfils, once again, has had a certain gear that I just haven't seen Bergs reach so far in the event. He's been good enough to make it to the final, but I also am worried about the overall, I'd say, moment for him. It's his first ever final, which tends to not go well for guys. For example, we saw Caboli last year losing the final to Korda, where he fell apart. If you play a lot of sets of tennis and you have yourself a big potential moment, some guys rise to the occasion, some guys don't. I think most guys don't, and you tend to lose your first final before winning. It might be selective recall, but I do wonder if Bergs will battle the nerves well, or if he's going to succumb to them. I'll go with B. I think Monfils will make it difficult on him. I think Monfils will keep the ball in play, and I think that Bergs eventually will just punt away too many free points en route to a loss. But you're looking at Bergs also going to a deciding set in back-to-back matches. Had a 7-5 set in the finale against Borges So fatigue could be an issue there with the conditions in Australia, where Monfils had a competitive matchup, but did win in straight sets. I think that you're looking at Monfils once again being the better player so far in this event. Think it will be fun, maybe 3 sets, but I think Monfils minus 1.5 games here is a good option. Once again, you're looking at Monfils being a minus 165 favorite. 30 cents for him to win by 2 games, I think it's a good deal. I understand it looks a bit juicy at first glance, but I think it makes sense. Bergs has really not had many long sets. He had the long set against Borges in the decider in the semis, but a lot of other sets finished like 6-1, 6-2. We also set 6-1 to Baena. He once again has had a couple of lopsided sets. Monfils, same thing. He beat Struff 6-1 in a set, beat Diaz Acosta 6-1. I think he can win a set by margin. In theory, Monfils could even cover this if he loses. If Monfils wins a set 6-1 and then loses a couple sets in a breaker or maybe a 6-4 in there, he could in theory cover this without actually winning the match, which could happen, but I can see Monfils winning a set lopsided, which definitely might help his chances of covering. So I am going to go with Monfils, which I think is basically a way of taking his money line while also getting a better price. I know in theory he could win the match while not covering this, but I think 30 cents is worth the difference. I'll go with Monfils minus 1.5 games here, minus 135 as my lock. Tough to fade a guy that has won 8 straight sets in the event. Now for the dog, I am going to go to the Felix and Korda match. Thought about taking the tiebreak at plus 125. Not going to do it, though. Instead, I am going to go with the over 2.5 sets at plus 125. I know it's against the head-to-head, as all 3 meetings did end in straight sets. They were dated, though, a couple of years. But Felix has been a 3-set magnet lately. 4 of his last 5 matches have gone to a decider. And you're looking at his overall form lately. He's been good, but a bit streaky at times. Went to 3 against Paul, went to 3 against Kaza, had a breaker against Giron, which could have potentially gone 3. So Felix has been involved in a couple of marathons, had a matchup against Fritz, which he won in the United Cup, and that went to 3 sets as well. Faced off against Chorich, won the first set via bagel, and lost the match. So he has once again been involved in a lot of marathon matches. Korda lately has not, as he ended up going to a pretty easy path to the final. Ended up having Fekina in straight sets, which he won. I had a walkover against Kokkinakis and had a matchup against Kekmanovic, which he won in straight sets. Did have a tiebreak, though, in that one. Point is, though, Korda hasn't looked good. Think Felix is the best opponent he's going to face in the event, so a step of competition might once again make Korda look a bit worse. Korda, though, is the betting favorite, but Felix is 2-0 in the head-to-head on hard court. So once again, they're expecting Korda to look good. Think Felix, matchup-wise, has just had Korda's number, and you kind of get a balancing act there where you see each guy have success at different points, which might result in a 3-setter. Point is, though, I think 125 is a good price. Felix has been good, but the point is I do think he has still been involved in a bunch of marathons. I'll pick that to repeat itself. Also faced off against Paul. And Paul, I could argue, is better than Korda. That was a 3-setter. Point is, though, Felix did just beat a potential, or I should say a fringe top 10, top 12 guy. I think that might carry over confidence-wise into this one. I think you'll see a close matchup against a similar player in terms of style in the final. I am going to go with the over 2.5 sets, though, at plus 125 as my dog. So once again, the actual plays for the show, the lock's going to be on Monfils, minus 1.5 games at minus 135. My dog will be on Felix and Korda, over 2.5 sets at plus 125. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. To see a comment from Steve asking if I am going to do an Australian Open show. I'll do you one better, Steve. I'm going to do 2 episodes. We've not done them yet. I was waiting for the draw to come out, and I was waiting for some outrights to come out for the quarters. Point is, though, we are going to do an actual episode, not just for the men's final, or of course for this collection of tournaments. We're also going to do a couple episodes this weekend for the Australian Open. We're going to do the overall preview and outrights episode for the men's and the women's. So keep that in mind. 2 episodes coming out within the next day or so before the event. We're going to preview the women's Australian Open and the men's, going through quarter odds, going through the overall bracket, same thing as usual. So if you do like some overall Grand Slam tennis, we are going to have you covered twofold for the next day, covering some outrights and stuff for both the men's and women's events. But a reminder, for the Australian Open, we are going to be covering it in every round. So we're going to be back once again for the first round, second round, third round onward. So a lot of episodes coming up once again over the next week or so. Until next time, though, you can find me on Twitter, Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show as well. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.